Hello there.
What's going on, guys? Unofficial Star Wars here. I hope you're all doing well. And in today's video, we have the Book of Boba Fett, Episode 4 breakdown, review, thoughts, and opinions, and theories towards the end of today's video. So make sure you guys are staying tuned for that. Without further ado, we're going to jump right on into it. It should also go without saying that there are, of course, spoilers for the Book of Boba Fett, period, so you have been warned. Leaving the Star Wars community in kind of a little bit of a midst of things regarding Episode 3, last week's episode on the Book of Boba Fett, not too many people were very fond of a lot of different things going on in that overall episode, and if you were one of those people, then everybody pretty much absolutely enjoyed and loved this entirety of this episode, Episode 4 of the Book of Boba Fett. It seems like a lot of things are going to be picking up here, not only in this overall episode, but for the future and the rest of the ongoing series here. Guys, we're now officially at the halfway mark for the Book of Boba Fett, with 3 more episodes yet to come. We begin the overall episode with more continuous flashbacks. However, as you guys may learn towards the end of today's episode, we do learn that we are now at the end of the flashback, seemingly as Boba Fett has now quote-unquote complete his overall healing from his scars and all of his different injuries that he has regarded, not only through the Sarlacc Pit, but really overall throughout the last couple of years now at this point, and his time in the overall desert has been very rough for him as well. We go on to learn furthermore that Boba Fett wants and needs his ship back from Jabba the Hutt's palace, as he's been scoping it out now for the last seemingly couple of days, ever since the unfortunate events that happened in Episode 3 with the end of the Tusken village. And so one night, as he's eating dinner with his bantha, he sees a flash in the distance, and we hear the ongoing Mandalorian theme. It brings absolute chills down my back and down my spine. I absolutely love the Mandalorian theme. It's a bit of a tease and a hint at not only in the time period of where we are and where the Book of Boba Fett is happening as of right now, that there would be for Season 1, Episode 5 for The Mandalorian. This is when Fennec Shand is first introduced into the Star Wars franchise and universe. And from there is seemingly ended in the Star Wars franchise until she is saved by the one and only Boba Fett, and that there is what we learn in today's episode and get that point of view from having Boba Fett go on to rescue Fennec Shand. Brings her back into the city of Mos Eisley to find more of those cyborgs on the outskirts to fix her up and give her some of her own robotic parts in order to save her life, as she's been shot pretty dang bad. Part of the mixed feelings ongoing with Episode 3, last week's episode for the Book of Boba Fett, had regarded the cyborgs and those kids on their little motorbikes, and honestly, in my own thoughts and opinions, for anything, this episode helped, and with helping those kind of people and those characters grow on me in the Star Wars universe and Star Wars franchise, as we're getting to learn more of them and really their overall popularity and population on this desert planet. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of cool to see them, and furthermore, I think we're definitely gonna be seeing a little bit more of them, and have a few more join Boba's gang here, as we're going to be seeing here towards the end of the episode. And while at first they seem a little bit snarky and refuse to actually help him out, even though they don't have any type of appointment or anything like that, they get right to work when he hands them a bag of credits. Something I don't really feel like we get to see a whole lot happen in Star Wars is have these types of little montages of somebody being fixed up and repaired and having like a surgery, kind of, especially right there in the open, is something very interesting and a little bit of a turn, I feel like, for Star Wars and the overall franchise, which is good. Different is good in my book, and I'm pretty good to see it, and I'm here for it. Not only that, but it's nice little callback to a lot of the other Star Wars material and other content that we've seen in the Star Wars franchise and universe as a whole, with different robotics and cyberpunk type of figures and characters coming into the franchise, such as Anakin Skywalker or Luke Skywalker. It's furthermore kind of cool to see how they embrace this almost as like it's their own species or different race in the Star Wars universe as well, and it's something that's going to be ongoing and interesting to see, especially as we go to continue on in the future of Star Wars. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing a little bit more of these guys, to be quite honest with you guys. Quite an interesting conversation and introduction goes between Boba and Fennec as she finally wakes up, as they lay to rest at another camp that Boba has set up with his bantha. It also helps us gather a little bit of a timeline of where we are in the Star Wars universe as well. Honestly, throughout these last couple of weeks, I was kind of confused on where exactly we are right now in the Star Wars universe as of right now. I knew that we were at the end of Return of the Jedi and that we're somewhere before the prequels are taking place, of course, and somewhere alongside where the Mandalorian is taking place, it's safe to presume and assume that Boba Fett has been gone not only with the Tusken Raiders, but has also been inside the Sarlacc Pit for quite a few years now at this point in the Star Wars universe. And seeing that the different planets, of course, have different regulations as far as their planets go around the sun and how long it takes for it to get around the sun, and what really regards a year because of how close or how far away some of these planets may be from an overall sun, it is kind of confusing. And on top of that, seeing that Tatooine has 2 different suns, it's kind of safe to presume that maybe it's going a little bit faster on the time scale here in the Star Wars universe. I don't really mean to confuse anybody, it's just kind of like a little bit of a theory and maybe my understanding and gandering of it. It's something I probably will talk about and cover in a separate video, so make sure you guys are staying tuned for that. Boba essentially catches Fennec up to date here on what has gone on, and Fennec pretty much kind of does the same for Boba, as he's kind of been gone and has kind of lost his sense of time from between being stuck in the Sarlacc Pit and then his time away with the Tusken Raiders. It's kind of hard to gauge what time he's really on. Boba asks in return from Fennec Shand that he has saved her life, that the two go off to Jabba the Hutt's palace to reclaim his Fire Spray Slave One bounty hunting ship. Yes, this is the first time that we're hearing the Slave One being called the Fire Spray since its recent controversy and its name change, something I'm probably also going to be talking about in a separate video here as well, so make sure you guys are staying tuned for that as well. The two make their way over to the Jabba the Hutt's palace, or now Bib Fortuna's palace here, and kind of scope out the area as it's absolutely flooded and guarded up with different guards. Fennec sends in a little bit of a spy drone to kind of gauge and get an understanding, and furthermore a map of the overall palace to see where they're going to be going here to find the Fire Spray ship. When the two are outside, waiting around, Boba mentions that he would like to take over the palace at some point in time and become a crime lord boss himself. A little bit of a foreshadowing for what we do see in the present time of what is being called The Mandalorian Season 2.5. When the little drone droid finally returns, they get a full-scale map on where they're exactly going to be going here and where pretty much every single patrol / enemy is pretty much throughout the entirety of the palace. The two of them go on to decide and have a little bit of a quick teamwork bonding moment here to decide that they're going to have to be sneaking into the palace here in order to take back the ship. And that's exactly what they do. This scene in particular right here, when Fennec Shand cuts open these steel bars right here, is pretty cool because we get a pretty familiar sound, the same sound of what I at first thought of when the droid was torturing the Gonk droid in Return of the Jedi, but it's also being said to be a callback to when Anakin Skywalker beheads Count Dooku in Revenge of the Sith. I bet you guys were already able to kind of guess this one on your own, but when Fennec and Boba finally make their way into the palace, they find themselves inside the kitchen, where we see one of the chef droids hold up a bunch of knives, an instant callback to General Grievous, also in Revenge of the Sith, when he's fighting Obi-Wan Kenobi. The rat catcher droid also makes its way into the kitchen. I'm pretty sure we see this familiar droid somewhere in, first of all, Jedi Fallen Order, and also definitely somewhere in Star Wars The Clone Wars. I can't completely remember off the top of my head. And two, Fennec and Boba Fett play a little bit of a mouse and cat type of game right here as they chase this droid here around the kitchen until they're able to finally catch him. For whatever reason, Boba has the need to hold this guy against the wall and tell him that he's Boba Fett. I guess that's just kind of what you do when you're Boba Fett. I mean, if I was Boba Fett, I'd probably do the same thing, and the droid is so scared that it powers itself off, which is a little bit of a guess here, but is probably the equivalent of a droid pissing itself. Fennec and Boba exit out the kitchen and pretty much go down a hall, turn the corner, and right there, boom, there is the Slave One, or also known as the Fire Spray. The ship is right there, but quickly to come, the alarm has been sounded, and the Gamorrean guards make their way down here into the hangar here and put up a little bit of a fight here for Fennec and Boba, which is pretty neat, and I absolutely love fight scenes, and I absolutely love all types of action. They, of course, make rid of these Gamorrean guards fairly quickly, and Boba makes his way into the ship as Fennec Shand holds off these other guards that are making their way into the hangar. It's actually very cool to see the dynamic duo that these two have become, and the becoming and really the overall birth, so to speak, of this dynamic duo that we once see in The Mandalorian Season 2, which is absolutely amazing to see how these guys are able to work so very well together. Fennec Shand even knows it and likes it, as she goes on to say, as we hear a little bit later, that she's going to be sticking around with Boba Fett for a little while longer to see where he goes and where he takes her. Boba finally takes lift off here with the Slave One, bumps it around a couple of the walls here in the palace a couple of times. Fennec is being an absolute badass and taking out all these different guards A few of the guards are even able to make their way onto the platform here for the fire spray, and Fennec, of course, takes them out pretty easily. The two finally make their way out and take liftoff, and as I had just mentioned, Boba, of course, very kindly asks Fennec Shand, "Where do you want me to drop you off? Your debt now is paid off," and she looks at him, smirks, and says, "I think I'm going to be sticking around with you for just a little bit longer." The two fly off from there as Boba explains that he wants to go find his armor, where he then goes to find himself at the Sarlacc Pit, the last place he remembers at least having his armor. From there, of course, after he crawls out of the pit that we see in episode 1, it's pretty much stripped and torn from him as we see the Jawas do, and from there, Cobb Vanth is able to take hold of the armor, picking it and buying it off of the Jawas. However, as I must mention, before seeing Fennec and Boba make their way over to the Sarlacc Pit in search of his armor, he must get revenge on the Nitko gang here, the biker gang here, that had taken away Boba's family of Tusken Raiders. He simply creeps up on this biker gang inside of the Slave One and just shoots them down in one of the most satisfying, I feel like, cinematic scenes ever in history of cinema, period. Not only seeing how satisfying it is able to see the Slave One just shoot down this biker gang just like that in a few shots and a few missiles kind of, but I feel like I'm right there as I am longing for revenge for having these this biker gang take away the Tusken Raiders from Boba Fett, and seeing him get that satisfaction out of that as well, and that revenge is very, very nice. So after this quick revenge scene goes on here, we finally see Fennec and Boba make their way over to the Sarlacc Pit in search of Boba's remaining armor, which of course is made of Beskar, and as I had already previously mentioned, Boba also only remembers having his armor left here at the Sarlacc Pit. He doesn't remember the Jawas coming and getting it, and I can't blame the man. He hadn't eaten, drank, or anything for the last couple of presumable months, maybe weeks or something along there. As I had already mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm still quite honestly, very confused with the timeline of how long Boba was actually inside of that Sarlacc Pit. They get closer and closer, and we get a little bit of a jump scare scene here as the Sarlacc Pit reaches up, grabs a hold of the Slave One, and pulls it into its mouth, trying to drag it in further and further, even though it probably physically and logistically cannot fit this giant ship inside of its little hole in its little mouth. And from there, Fennec is able to crawl around here into the Slave One, press the seismic charge button as it drops into the mouth of the Sarlacc Pit, and we get one of the most satisfying scenes as well here in Star Wars and honestly cinematic history, as this bomb goes into the mouth of the Sarlacc Pit and it blows it up from underground, creating a ripple effect here throughout the sand here. Something else I wanted to mention, this shot right here is absolutely beautiful, and it would be such a waste if they didn't use it in any type of promo artwork or anything like that. So Lucasfilm, hint, please use this in something, or at least get it as a poster or something. It's absolutely amazing and beautiful. Another thing I kind of forgot to mention is that at the Sarlacc Pit here, we're also able to see Jabba the Hutt's destroyed Bar Salge sailboat right here as well, which is a cool little callback to Return of the Jedi as well. Of course, as we see in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, Boba Fett is in such search and such need of his father's armor that he'll pretty much do absolutely anything for it, including driving into a dead Sarlacc Pit and getting all types of goo, guts, and all of the above all over him in search of it, only to come up with absolutely nothing. Must I mention, we continue to see that continuation of a bond between Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. The two sit down here at the Sarlacc Pit here and by a fire here, and this is essentially the end of the flashbacks. We're pretty much up to speed here with where we last saw Boba Fett in The Mandalorian, and from there going on into the book of Boba Fett. And this is a very important conversation between these two characters. Not only is it building the kind of overall relationship, as I had just mentioned, between the two characters, but we also hear Boba Fett mentioning how he furthermore is longing to be more of his own boss and his own type of crime lord. He's done being a bounty hunter and he's done working for people, and Fennec Shand seems to be kind of hopping along on that train there as well, as she has also been a bounty hunter for quite a while as well. And from there, to end out the remaining flashbacks here that have gone on for such a long but respectable time, I feel like a respectable time frame here, it's something that we need. It's something that helps build a character and develop a character in an overall story, compared to just having Boba Fett going around these different planets, shooting people and bad guys, and it's just kind of like that for the entirety of a series. I feel like it would be honestly be very very boring, and it's kind of comparing it to the Mandalorian Season 2, although that's not completely what that was. It did have an end result, but people are just kind of like wanting something from the Book of Boba Fett, having Boba Fett go around to these different planets and just killing a bunch of bad guys, goes to the next planet for the next episode, and so on, never having type of any character development or end goal. It goes on to mention, and it's honestly something that we've never really seen with Boba Fett, is that he needs a tribe. And it's kind of foreshadowing for how we see him in the present quote-unquote time here with the Mandalorian, and kind of going alongside with that compared to Return of the Jedi and the after events of Return of the Jedi, is essentially of how he wants to build up his own tribe or quote-unquote army here now that we're going to be seeing here for Jabba's palace, now Boba's palace. Especially for when it comes to defeating an overall goal of taking down this army of Pikes that are now invading his territory. The flashbacks finally finish up here with Fennec and Boba going back to Jabba the Hutt's palace, a bit Fortuna's palace now at this point in time, as we did see in the Mandalorian Season 2 post-credit scenes and the announcement for Book of the Boba Fett here. And from there, he awakes from his bacta tank as his droid rushes over with a robe and tells him that his healing is now complete, and he is now fully healed from all of his different Sarlacc scars here and from spending so much time out in the Tatooine suns. Quite honestly, a very satisfying moment, to be completely honest and fair with you guys, as now these flashbacks are finally done and people are kind of getting a little restless. I felt like these last couple of episodes, for episode kind of 3 here, especially episode 3 and episode 4, I guess overall from what I've seen so far, is that people were kind of getting a little bit restless with these flashbacks and kind of just wanted them to finish up here, and that's what they were hoping to see with episode 4 and for the rest of the overall series and season that would go on to have a legit Boba Fett here in the present time here, taking down bad guys and ruling Tatooine. And so it's safe to say that these flashbacks have finally finished out. My only what if they would have had here, I guess, for these flashbacks is we had a few flashbacks back to a younger Boba Fett on Kamino. What if they had a flashback with a younger Boba Fett during the Clone Wars, as there was a whole Clone Wars arc with Mace Windu versus Boba Fett? It's something I would have absolutely have died for. Like, I'm talking, I would have sold my left kidney to see something like that. Would have been absolutely amazing. From there, jumping out of the bacta tank and into present time, we see the Black Chrysanthemum Wookiee here at the sanctuary, and he's up here causing a little bit of a trouble as he's pretty drunk, to be fair with you guys, and he sees this group of Trandoshans here having the time of their lives over here playing a few games here, and he's getting pretty pissed off and pretty angry. Now, a little bit of a history and a little bit of background to kind of simplify it for why Wookiees hate Trandoshans so much and why Trandoshans hate Wookiees so much and why there's such a feud between these two different species. Essentially, the Trandoshans had enslaved the race at some point in time, but honestly, in a context of the Star Wars universe, at what point in time weren't Wookiees necessarily slaves? We've seen the slaves on the Kessel slave mines over there, and we've seen them being enslaved by the Empire. I mean, I'm just pointing out that they have been enslaved a couple of times, so why would it leave such a feud between the Trandoshans and the Wookiees? It's something I'm probably going to talk about and cover in a separate video, so make sure you guys are staying tuned for that as well. Black Chrysanthemum gets up, beats the crap out of these guys here, causing a whole scene, of course, here in the sanctuary, picks up one of the Trandoshans as Madame Garcinix makes her way over to plead with Black Chrysanthemum to please just simply let the gentleman down and let him go on his way. It would pay off his tab and all that type of stuff, a little bit of a deal, and pleading with him because of how bad it would make the sanctuary look here. It would be bad for business. But of course, instead of just negotiating with her, he looks around and essentially just rips this guy's arm off and then throws him to the ground and then walks out like a total badass. Not only, of course, is a callback to A New Hope here when Obi-Wan Kenobi chops off that one guy's arm in the bar there in the cantina, but it's also just an overall reference to Wookiees as a whole, as they're pretty famous for ripping off arms apparently within the Star Wars universe. Not only that, but I also feel like it's something that is helping establish the rest of the different themes and different types of tones here that we're going to be going forth with the rest of the second half of this season of the Book of Boba Fett, and for really the overall future, I feel like with the Mandalorian universe and all that type of different stuff, and having it include darker themes and tones, and including those types of, I guess, themes for the overall Star Wars franchise as a whole, is something I'm also looking forward to, is that they're going to get down a little bit dirty here and get a little more grittier and a little more darker. It's definitely something that Star Wars has always been, and don't get me wrong, it's something that Disney Star Wars has always kind of followed through here with, but I've been waiting to kind of see something like this in the Book of Boba Fett that really establishes this type of show. And And of course, as he walks out of the sanctuary here, Boba Fett had watched the entire thing and witnessed the entire thing. He follows him outside and asks him, hey, do you want to have a little bit of a job here for me? Do you want to work for me and stand by me and work together once again? Now, I've kind of mentioned it off and on throughout different breakdown videos here, that Black Chrysanthemum and Boba Fett have actually worked together in the past, but we've never actually seen somebody actually working for somebody else. And in this case, Boba Fett is going to be taking on Black Chrysanthemum, and he's going to be working for him. And this is something that everybody's been longing for, and has absolutely been loving and wanting to see here ever since episode 2 has came out for the Book of Boba Fett. And from there, Black Chrysanthemum is joining the team of Boba Fett to take on this army of Pikes. The overall episode seemingly is ending out with this scene right here, where we have these different sections of Mos Espa is being divided up here, as it was by Bib Fortuna, because he just simply wasn't powerful enough to control each different sector and section here of Mos Espa. So as we had learned in the previous episode, episode 3, that he had actually divided up different sections of Mos Espa in order to rule it. This here is one of the last actual scenes from any of the TV spots, any of the trailers, or anything like that. From now on, the rest of the episodes that we're going forth here with the Book of Boba Fett, it's all going to be unseen, completely brand new footage, never seen before, anything like that. I mean, all the trailers, TV spots, that type of stuff is all over, and I've been matching it up fairly well here throughout these last couple of weeks, from episode 1 to all the way now episode 4. I'm pretty sure we're just about out of all of the different trailer and TV spots and footage from there. Be sure to comment down below in case I had actually missed any of that, or even at that, feel free to just DM me over on Instagram, Unofficial Star Wars. Not to go unnoticed or anything like that, this scene is very important to wrap up this overall episode and from where we're going to be going forth with future episodes for the Book of Boba Fett. Essentially a recap of what we saw in this scene, and to kind of simplify it, is Boba Fett assembles these different leaders from these different sections in order to, first of all, propose the idea that they would work together in order to take down the Pikes. They all decline that idea, and then he moves on to the idea of, well, just don't join them and don't be against me, because that's definitely going to be something that they would probably regret in the very end. Not only that, but it's almost like kind of like a first time for some of these guys meeting Boba Fett, the new leader of Boba Fett's palace. And from there, we get another final shot from any of the teasers or any of the trailers or anything like that, with Fennec and Boba on top of the palace here as they're watching all these different leaders go off on their speeders and ride off in the distance. Fennec mentions a little bit about something about using some of the money that they have from the palace that has been stored away to actually buy a little bit of muscle and buy a few troops in that type of sense, and we hear the Mandalorian theme playing over that. So it's definitely going to go without saying that we're definitely going to be seeing the Mandalorian in the next episode, which I am very, very excited for. We already had our little bit of a hint there at the Mandalorian at the beginning of today's episode as well here, as they had kind of foreshadowed, or not necessarily foreshadowed, but showed us our point of view, or Boba Fett's point of view, of how he was able to go and rescue Fennec Shand after her little of a tussle with the Mandalorian. So from there to now this, of having the Mandalorian theme kind of play over that, as they mentioned, having a little more extra muscle, although at this point in time, I really don't feel like the Mandalorian would be all in it for the money necessarily. He himself is kind of developing into more of a character that's like Boba Fett, less of a bounty hunter and more or less working for himself, especially now that he's going to be wielding the Darksaber and be the leader of Mandalore. So when he does appear here in the Book of Boba Fett, be prepared to see him with the Darksaber and being a total badass. More or less, or a prediction here for the coming episodes, but I definitely am hoping that we see Omega, no, not that Omega, I mean this Omega here from the Bad Batch, as they are brother and sister, Boba and Omega, coming from Jango Fett and being both brother and sister in a type of sense here, as they're both non-accelerating aging clones. However, when it even does come to that, having these two characters meet up at some point in time, whether or not it's going to be seen in the Book of Boba Fett or the Bad Batch Season 2, first of all, there's plenty of opportunity to stick this kind of little situation or this scene in any of those things, and I'm very well longing for the day that we finally get to see that. And on top of that, speaking of those types of legendary scenes, I long for the day that we see Mace Windu return and have his sweet, sweet revenge, or more or less have Boba Fett have his sweet, sweet revenge on Mace Windu, the man that has murdered and killed his father. He definitely seems to be portraying that kind of theme of revenge after seeing him go after the Nico gang of bike riders there, so we're hopefully going to be seeing that theme kind of return. Maybe Boba will go after Mace Windu or vice versa. Whatever the case may be, it's definitely going to be very, very interesting to see. I also feel like the Trandoshans seem to be playing somewhat of a heavy theme and reoccurring appearances here for the Book of Boba Fett, as one of the main sections are actually of Mos Espa is actually being led by Trandoshans, so it would make sense to see him pop up at some point in time, more or less actually working with Boba Fett and joining that hashtag, or that quote-unquote type of muscle, the army that will be going against the Pikes. And on top of that, seeing Cad Bane also appear somewhere in the Book of Boba Fett. I feel like the relationship between Boba Fett and Cad Bane is a little bit complex, but it definitely makes a whole lot of sense, and a lot of people are really wanting to see this, and I think it would be very cool to see as well. And on top of that, I also think that we're going to be seeing Dengar somewhere up here joining the group of Boba Fett and joining his muscle and on that type of team. And to be completely honest with you guys, the list could go on, and that's why I made a whole separate video talking about pretty much every single character that I think we could see at some point in time appear here in the Book of Boba Fett, and some of those characters already have actually appeared, so make sure you guys check out that video there as well. Overall, a simple, easy 10 out of 10 on my end. Absolutely amazing episode. I loved every single bit of it, all 50 minutes of it. Be sure to let me know of your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below, guys. What did you think about the Book of Boba Fett episode 4, and what do you guys are hoping to see here in the future episodes of the Book of Boba Fett as the remainder of the season? Second half of the season is now here. I'd love to hear what you guys all think in the comment section down below. Quick shout out to all of you guys that are still watching. I know it was a very lengthy video here, and I was very happy to make this video, and it was very enjoyable to actually make here. There's a lot to talk about in this overall episode, and it really just boiling my blood with all types of Star Wars content and that Star Wars craze going on there. And of course, as you guys already know, I talk about all types of Star Wars news leaks and all types of Star Wars, all of the above here on the channel, so make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell if you haven't already been notified when new videos are coming out, guys. Thanks so much for watching today's video. Of course, may the Force be with you as always. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.